to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd actually like to begin this meeting this evening with a moment of silence in memory of two individuals that passed, and I apologize that I didn't do the first at our last meeting, but recently we lost our longtime city attorney, Alan Grossman. Alan served this community with great distinction and honor for more than 50 years, and we extend our condolences to Natalie and his children and grandchildren and all the friends and family. And second, we lost a young man recently, Hayden Smith, whose parents and grandparents and extended family are very active in this community. It was quite a tragic event to lose someone so young, and I would ask that you keep his folks, Bill and Andrea, and the entire family in your thoughts and prayers. So if you please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Present this evening are myself, Mayor Morrow, Council Members Gearboss, Ivo Koenig, Rhodes, Roth, Tahar, and Dillon. From City staff, we have City Manager Campbell, Clerk Royal, City Treasurer Bennett, Police Chief Rennick, Parks and Rec Director Scruggs, DPW Director Fordyce, and City Engineer Rubel. The rest of you who are in the audience this evening, if you'd be so kind to sign in the back to my left, we would appreciate that. At this time, I would seek a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Staff has asked that one additional item be added to the new business section of our agenda this evening. It will be 15-182. It relates to a memorandum that was passed out earlier this evening, dated September the 14th, 2015, from Boone and Dar. It involves the ventilation upgrades at our recreation complex, and staff will be able to speak to that. Additionally, there was a memorandum, an amended memorandum, distributed this evening, dated the 11th of September 2015, regarding the establishment of 6 sesquicentennial task force subcommittees, and there are 2 additional people that I would like to appoint to those groups. One appears at the end of Group 1, and one appears at the end of Group 5, and those are the only changes to that memo from when you would have received it on Thursday. Are there any other additions to the agenda this evening? If not, I would seek a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. All those in favor of approving the agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. There are no absences this evening, so we will dispense with that. Next is citizen comments on agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. And I do want to note, because I spoke to Mr. Taylor Jacobson before the meeting today, I think there are a number of people here affiliated with the Presbyterian Church downtown who'd like to speak to the Merchant Park issue. And as long as you refer to the minutes of the previous meeting, we would welcome your comments at this time. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Please come forward to the microphone. You have 3 minutes.
Prior notification was just done in this last week, so this is our first opportunity to respond to this proposal. We can understand the upgrades to Merchant Park and for a fresh green space. We're concerned about the unforeseen side effects of the proposal to relocate the trash and grease containers to the end of the city parking lot. The rear entrance is our main entrance for over 150 parishioners weekly. This entrance was rebuilt in 2013 and is our only handicap accessible entrance. Our concern for the new dumpster corral are fourfold: impact to handicapped parking spaces, creating a blind corner, typical smell and rodent control issues, and the distance the restaurants must transport their trash and grease to the new location. For impact to parking spaces, we're concerned that the current dumpster corral has no less than 7 containers in it: 3 trash receptacles, 1 huge recycling bin, and 3 grease containers. shows 2 trash bins and 1 grease container. So it does not seem to meet the needs of business owners. And if the footprint of the current proposal expands, this will push our handicap parking spaces farther away from our rear entrance. Number 2, the proposal includes an 8-foot wall, creating a blind corner to the pedestrian walkway, which the elderly use to enter our church. Number 3, issues of smell, blowing garbage, and rodent control are self-evident. This can be seen at the current dumpster location, which has a 7-foot block wall. It still generates quite a bit of smell and does not appear to be well maintained on the inside. Basically, from the church's viewpoint, you're replacing a flower garden with a stinking trash pit. And number 4, with the location proposed at the end of the block, the distances that the dining establishments will have to transport their trash and grease is almost triple. This path will go behind each of about 40% of the parking spaces and the handicap spaces at the end of the block toward our area. This area will become black and greasy over time. The members of the First Presbyterian Church of Saline and many of your fellow residents would like to scuttle this proposal and look for opportunities to possibly reorient the current corral toward an angle so that trucks can access the trash bins directly and we can maintain the status quo on access to the current business. If the new location must go forward, we ask for the following: minimum remediation, a full wall, not just a fence, linear drains to divert runoff, water access so that they can hose out the area from time to time, considerations for rodent control, and electrical lighting. Thank you for your consideration and concerns for safety and accessibility.
Thank you. Additional citizen comments? Please. Yep, you can actually just come forward. Thank you, Mickey Joe.
Hi, Keith Brown, longtime resident of City of Saline, also a previous facilities elder at First Presbyterian Church of Saline. Thank you, City Council, for this opportunity to comment. I'd like to comment in regard to the Merchant Park dumpster relocation. The move will impact the pedestrian traffic which passes currently on the sidewalk at the entrance and exit of parking lot 1 at Hall Street. With the proposed dumpster relocation, a near zero visibility will be created by the 8-foot wall dumpster enclosure to drivers and pedestrians at the exit of the parking lot on Hall Street. Drivers will be unable to see those walking towards the church's only handicap accessible entrance when using the sidewalk in front of the proposed dumpster. Pedestrians will not see oncoming vehicles when approaching traffic is crossing, when those are crossing. This is a concern for everyone, especially children, and even a greater concern for anyone that requires the use of mobility devices. I happen to have a daughter that has a physical disability, which requires the use of a walker to help with her mobility. And she uses that sidewalk at parking lot 1 regularly. I don't know if you know someone who has a physical disability, but that area is difficult enough to navigate as is. Not being able to see if a vehicle is approaching the exit because of that proposed dumpster wall in the way of view would make it even harder. My family is thankful to the city, concerned with safety and accessibility with the recent focus on addressing the sidewalk issues throughout the city, repairs, and along with the continuous support for People's Express. It's a viable mode of transportation by renewing their contract, which my daughter happens to use greatly. But moving the dumpsters to the proposed location at Hall Street entrance and exit to parking lot 1 would be a step backwards for the city in terms of safety and accessibility. Now is the time something can be done. Proposals and plans can always be amended. This is the one which the City Council should reevaluate and come up with a plan that works for everyone. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Taylor Jacobson, not a resident of Saline, but a member of the Presbyterian Church. Because we did not have the opportunity to hear our desires or our needs made, We are hoping that you will review your design and look at the possibilities of rectifying what we think is a problem to our end of the street. After looking the sidewalk over, or looking the parking lot over, it appears that if you left it at the same area that it's in, it could be redesigned with maybe more than one of the boxes, have maybe 2 boxes facing out so those trucks can come straight in, or come in at the angle that you're looking for at the other end. I think even a better idea is to put it right behind the sculpture on Ann Arbor Street, because you have a little bit more room to work with because of the sidewalk in between the 2 lanes of parking. We're hoping you will look at that and see if there's a better way of solving the problem that helps out. You know, I talked to Dan at Dan's, and he's concerned about the length of walk for his workers at closing time to go down to that trash dumpster. I talked with the owner of Smoke, and he thinks it would be best across the parking lot up by the sculpture. We hope that you'll review that. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor.
I'm Sue Janisic. I'm a resident of Saline and a member of First Presbyterian. As a member of the church and a ruling elder, I will tell you that all the members of our church are very upset with this decision. You want to take away the little rose garden and replace it with a garbage structure. I know that the idea is to have a place for nearby restaurants to take their refuge, including from grease traps, and carry it across several hundred feet to a dump it. What are the chances that it will all make it that far? I have heard that the local restaurants actually find this to be a bad idea. Our church has been a very long-standing member of the community. We have always strived to make the area around our church as welcoming as possible. We turned the northeast corner of Hall and Michigan Avenues into a welcoming meditation garden. How can you justify this decision to remove roses to erect a brick dump site? It is sincere hope that you will reverse this decision and come up with a solution that would be more advantageous to all concerned.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Baylog. I live in Lodi, but I go to First Presbyterian Church, and I just really want to make you aware of the handicapped issues that go along with this area. We have recently lost 2 parking places on McKay Street, just east of Hall, and that impacted my husband, who is handicapped, who uses that building that we have there. The church actually only has 4 parking places to their name, in a driveway and as part of, I think it's the McKenzie Building parking lot that's between our 2 buildings. We have only the 1 driveway. And when I looked through our directory, I found that there are probably 19 families that have a handicapped person. We have had people fall in that area because of the pavement and the sidewalks. And people get out there, drop off people right there. And if you put trash containers there, there's no place, you can't see the traffic or the people coming or going. So maybe revisiting the whole plan, and just to make you aware that we really have a handicap issue at our church. Our ramp opens onto Hall Street right on that parking lot area. And it's already difficult as it is. We have a member that comes very little because he's come a number of times and he's handicapped. There's no place for him to get close. He comes from around Canton and he has to go all the way back home because he can't get close enough to the handicap ramp to come to church. So I just wanted to let you know about that and that whole area, just to keep that in mind in your plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Mandy Tusa. I am a Pittsfield Township resident, and my kids go to Saline schools, but I'm here on behalf of the Chad Tuff Foundation, and we are asking tonight that you approve the road closure, the one lane being closed on Industrial, so that runners can run down there, and also hopefully the waiver of the fees that are involved with the police officers. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tammy Carr, and Chad is my son. And I just am asking for the approval for the road closure.
Hi, my name is Beth Lorio. I live in Centennial Farms. Also here to support the Chad Tuff Foundation with the road closures and the waiver of fees for the police officers.
I am Zoe Thompson from Pittsfield Township, here to approve, hopefully have the roads closed approved, as well as the waiver of fees. We do have a lot of entrants already for the race, a lot of big community buzz, sponsorship, and so it's going to be a really nice community event, and we're hoping for the closure. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Val Townsend, and I also have kids that go to Saline schools. I'm also asking for the one-lane road closure on Industrial for the runners to come through, and I hope you also waive the fees. Thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council representatives, and I thank you for your service to the great community of Saline, Michigan. My name is Joel Nelson. I've been a resident in Saline for the last 30 years, and I'm here to plead with you and being supportive with First Pres and their concerns for their corner with the trash containers and the grease containers and the whole design on that aspect of it. Also, I have one concern, health concern, that for you to consider making the back area by smoke and behind Dan's a smoke-free campus for health reasons for the great community of Saline. I thank you for your time and for your service again.
Thank you, Joe.
Mary Hess, and it would be on the minutes. In August 6th of 2014, regarding the Merchants Park Work Group, it states this group has worked with the Saline Main Street Design Team to develop a conceptual plan that was recently presented to the primary stakeholders, business property owners located in the northeast quadrant. That never happened. That's a year ago. It appears the Merchant Park property has been a great kept secret from the public and the Saline taxpayers. There has been nothing in the Saline FYI papers to explain this expensive project with a lot of the cost to be spent on private property. The August 6, 2014, that I mentioned letter stated the Merchants Park group has presented their plans to the stakeholders of the quadrant. Well, quadrant, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it does say those that share an interest in the enterprise, which the church, Oxygen Plus, more people than just Mr. Kinley's property. But it appears the Presbyterian Church was not given privy information or allowed input to this plan that would greatly impact them in the future. This plan was passed and prepared for public bid. The placement of garbage dumpsters and grease containers and what appears to be a loss of 2 parking places will impact them. Mr. Gearbaugh and council voted August 17th that the adjacent properties be told of this project. As of September 14th, it appears the city has yet to meet with the church. As far as the safety, you are putting the taxpayers at peril, because if this plan goes through and someone is injured from Dan's Tavern or whatever, going to put their stuff in this receptacle and fall, be it ice, be it whatever, they will sue the city because you have changed something. I have some paperwork from Mr. Grossman that says when you change things, the liability. This was put in, the Merchant Park was put in the 2016 budget year, but somehow it's been pushed to be done in the next 2 months. If the bid goes out in, let's see, in the next 2 weeks, we have October, November. Are they doing it in December? Are we going to do it half? And have the people been notified their electricity is going out for a period of time? I think this is only helping this outside gathering place, of which I would like Henny Field to be it. I don't think
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. Are there any additional public comments? Well, let me say a few things. Obviously, appreciate everyone who came out this evening. And obviously, as it relates to Merchants Park, good people can disagree. But the assertion that things have been kept from the public, which is what was just articulated, again, no disrespect, is just absolute nonsense. I would, and I do value the perspective of the members of the Presbyterian Church, and I spoke to Mr. Jacobson before the meeting. Taylor, remind me when you could get council a letter on this subject from the congregation. They meet next Tuesday, okay. We have a council meeting a week from today because of the Labor Day holiday, but what I will do then is at our first meeting in October, this will be added as a discussion item, assuming that we get your letter by that time. And I want to confirm for the members of the church that what was approved was a concept. None of the items have gone out to bid yet. And I think speaking, well, I know I'm speaking for myself, but I suspect I'm also speaking for everybody else at this dais, that we really pride ourselves on being responsive and receptive to the ideas of our constituents and to our important downtown stakeholders, of which the First Presbyterian Church is a very valued and respected member of our community. So again, Taylor, you can convey this to your parishioners that, assuming I get a letter, this will be a discussion item at our first meeting in October. Your members, your fellow congregants are welcome to come and speak, but hopefully we can get a consensus on the specific issue of the dumpster and how best to move forward. If that sounds okay to you. Very good. And again, we appreciate your time. And ladies, who came on behalf of the Chad Tough Run, thank you for your comments, and hope that you stick around because when we get to that motion on the agenda, there may be some questions from the dais, but we appreciate your time this evening. Thank you. Are there any additional public comments? Please.
Good evening, Lamar Handcamp, a Saline resident, live at 435 Mills. Excuse me, is a past member of First Presbyterian Church. I want to concur and agree with everything that was said. I wasn't going to say anything, so what I'm really up here for now is for the Chad Tough Foundation for their run. I just feel strongly that any support that can come from this council, from this city, for that event is the proper thing to do in this day and age. What they're asking for is minimal, and I think it should be within our ability as a community to assist in any way we can with what they need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Handcamp. If there are no additional public comments, we will move on then. Thank you all for your thoughts. We appreciate those. We move on to the consent agenda, excuse me. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
I'd like to remove something.
Please.
The council minutes. I'd like to have that for discussion, please.
Okay, and so that comes in, that'll be the first thing under new business. Okay. That becomes then the first thing under new business. The minutes from the previous meeting. Is there a motion then to approve the consent agenda as amended?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Cybo Koenig. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it and the motion carries unanimously. The first item will be a motion to approve the minutes of the August 13th special council meeting and the August 17th, 2015 regular meeting as submitted. Is there a motion?
I'll move to accept them. If there's going to be a change or something, I'm concerned about that.
Okay. Is there a second to?
I will
why don't we
second
start, Mr. Gearbaugh? Why don't we start with acknowledging receipt?
That works.
Okay. A move by Gearbaugh to acknowledge receipt. Mr. Roth, do you want to second that?
I will second that.
Okay. It's been properly moved to acknowledge receipt, and that was moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Roth. Assuming that you don't have any questions, Mr. Gearbaugh, then I'll turn it over to Mr. Roth.
My concern is on the regular council meeting, unfinished business, 15-31. During our vote the last time on this particular item, I suggested that we would separate these two items, the dumpster and the merchant park. Also, there was a friendly amendment added to this, which I said should be voted on separately according to Robert's Rules of Order. And I was put down saying it's okay as it is. And as this reads now, and I want the public to know that after the Eleanor Sweitz, S-I-E-W-E-R-T-Z, who's a registered parliamentarian, being contacted, she said the vote would turn out the same, but we should show in the minutes as adopted the motion is. I'm not sure if this is correct. I can go with that, but I would like to see that we can follow parliamentary procedure, and I really don't like the friendly amendments put on something like this when it's such a big issue. We need to have further discussion along with that. So I think this whole thing is kind of messed up regard the merchant park, the whole fiasco along with it. So I hope that we can reconsider and take in, as a council, think about some of this stuff deeper and further as I had suggested. Thank you.
Anything further?
That's it for now.
Okay. All right. Any discussion? Mr. Gearbaugh?
The reason, I believe this is my, not the motion I made, but I was the one that made the amendments to make sure that the notification would occur so that we would have this discussion which has come forward. So I believe the way it was done and the way it was approved by this group was appropriate. There are ways to do Robert's Rules of Orders, but we've never followed it to the formal nth degree, and we've always been a more cooperative council. So we did have discussion. We, in fact, I thought for about 15 minutes talked about the amendments to make sure we all had clarification on it. I know there was discussion as to dissent on how we did that, but as a group, we came forward and said so. So I believe the way it's in the minutes, the way it's reflected is appropriate.
Well, let me say this real quick. Mr. Roth is correct, and it is my mistake, and I'm glad to accept responsibility. After reviewing my Robert's Rules of Order book and after having the clerk contact this expert who evidently has actually instructed the city, boards and commissions, council members and staff on parliamentary procedure, it is appropriate to vote on a friendly amendment unless there is no objection articulated from the dais. And what really needs to happen moving forward is I or whoever is chairing the meeting needs to do a better job of asking if there's an objection. And so in this sense, because I assume that both Councilmember Roth and Councilwoman Dillon would have objected, it really should have been voted on. However, as is enumerated in the minutes from the last meeting, as Mr. Roth alluded to, the expert is saying that no further action is required at this time. So, Mr. Gearbaugh, your point is also well taken that anybody can offer a friendly amendment or an amendment at any time. That doesn't mean any of us have to like it or vote for it, but you have the freedom to offer that amendment. Okay?
May I make a remark?
Please.
I certainly appreciate Mr. Gearbaugh's intent for that, and I think it was very important. In regarding that Mrs. Hess brought up tonight about the memo that we had for August 6, 2014, stating that all the parties have been notified within that block. This was put in this motion by Mr. Gearbaugh so some action could happen. I am sorry that we are given misinformation in these memos, and I appreciate Mr. Gearbaugh making sure that that's happened. I was just upset about the procedure. And I'm upset about that we're not getting the truth in these memos when it says everybody's been notified.
Anything further?
That's it, thank you.
All right, there's a motion on the floor to acknowledge receipt. It's been properly moved by, oh gosh, I don't have it here. It's been properly moved by, was it Gearboss, seconded by Roth?
Yes.
All those in favor of acknowledging receipt signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. How about a motion to approve the minutes of the special council meeting on August the 13th and the regular meeting on the 17th?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Gearboss. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Seibel Koenig. Any discussion?
Mayor,
Please.
I will abstain since I was absent.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the new business section of the agenda this evening, the first item up is 15-169, Michael Wolf Eagle Scout Project, Gaga Ball Pit at Mill Pond Park. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 8th, 2015 memo from Parks and Rec Director Scruggs and to accept or not to accept the Parks Commission recommendation to approve or not to approve the Eagle Scout project of Michael Wolf to construct a Gaga Ball Pit at the southeast corner of the Romp Play structure at Mill Pond Park. Is there a motion?
Move to acknowledge receipt and to accept and approve.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Gearbaugh. Ms. Scruggs, and of course we have a guest. We welcome you here this evening, and as soon as your PowerPoint is ready to go, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Well, actually, I will be introducing Michael Wolf. He is a Eagle Scout candidate. He came to me a few months ago, and we've been in discussions about a project, one being that putting in a Gaga ball pit at Mill Pond Park. After our discussions, we did have some meetings with our park foreman, Dan Bennett, and also met with Jim Roth, representative from the Celtic Festival, because the Gaga ball pit is a permanent structure that would be at Mill Pond, and we want to make sure that we're not interfering with maintenance or any other big events that we have down at Mill Pond. I'm going to let Michael, once he gets his presentation up and running, give you some more ins and outs, and if you have any other questions of me, I'd be happy to come back up. But also I wanted to mention that the Park Commission did hear his presentation and enthusiastically supported that, so just wanted to let you know that as well.
Thank you, Director Scruggs.
Thank you.
We have some technical issues. I would note for my council colleagues, it looks like it's working. This is the first official meeting with the new projection screen, and of course, off to my left, you're seeing a new TV or a new screen as well. So, Michael, I apologize. The floor is yours. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Wolf, a Boy Scout from Troop 457, and I'm going to be presenting my Eagle Scout project to you all. So I'm sure most of you have been through the process of Eagle Project, so you probably know what you're doing, but just to explain to anyone who does not know, the purpose of the Eagle Scout project is for the Scout to show leadership in a service project that benefits the entire community. And the Scout himself, so me, I must raise all the funds, and it will not be a burden on taxpayers or any other party. All right, so my project, I would like to build a Gaga pit or Gaga ball pit at Mill Pond Park, similar to the one at the rec center. It's used to play a certain game, but I will get to that later. The structure is a wooden octagon that is 3 feet high and 24 feet in diameter. It will have a gate for easy accessibility in case anyone with a disability would like to use it. I believe in the last project like this that went through, the council proposed that, and mine will have that too. And the posts will be cemented 3.5 feet underground in order to make the structure stable. This design that you see on the screen is most likely what it will look like, but there are a few possible changes that I might make. The posts that will support the structure may go on the outside, and I may make the rails a little wider so that give it a different appearance or to make the ball bounce more regularly. But those are just minor things. Also, the blue rectangle that you see on the front will be a sign with the rules of the game on it so that anyone who is unfamiliar with the game will be able to jump in and play. The one at the rec center does not have one of those. So this is kind of what playing the game looks like. The objective of the game is to hit the ball with your hands and hit the ball into someone else below the knee. And then when they get hit below the knee, they step out of the ring, and you would like to be the last one in the ring. It's a lot of fun, good for all ages. Yeah, I've played it myself. The location of the project is highlighted by the purple octagon that you see on the screen. It is south of the, or to the left of the swing set, if you are looking out from the parking lot, and south of most of the play structure. This location was chosen very carefully. I talked to people from the Celtic Festival, Mr. Jim Peters, and we decided that this was the best location to work around the tents of the Celtic Festival. I also talked to Mr. Dan Bennett from maintenance, and this is also the best location for mowing and other maintenance purposes. For pavilion rentals in the rentable area, this is ideal because it'll be the maximum distance away so that they won't have to deal with much noise or watching people use the thing if they're renting the pavilion. In terms of utilities, I will make sure to call Ms. Dig in advance to make sure there is no conflict with utilities underground. And there is a dying tree on the site right now, but I've talked to Mr. Dan Bennett, and that tree is going to be removed independently of the project anyways, even before I propose the project. So he will make sure that is removed before the project. There are a lot of benefits to the community for building this one. The one at the rec center is very popular and it's used very often, but for people like me, it's a 10, 15-minute drive from our house, and putting one on the west side of town would make a pit or a structure like this accessible to people on the other side of town easier. There's also new housing being built near Mill Pond, and I believe I've heard rumors that there may be more housing on the west side of town coming soon. So this would be an ideal location for new housing. It also helps with the community goal of keeping people active, and it's playable by people of all ages. The materials, or the cost of everything. So the materials I have here, lumber, hinges, and concrete, I got quoted by Chelsea Lumber, and they quoted me for $554.24 before a discount that they apply to all Eagle projects. I use that value to account for any more materials that I may need to buy instead of using the discounted value, so that if I have to buy any more, it should still not exceed the discount or the value before the discount. To transfer the materials, if we cannot borrow a truck from a friend or from someone we know, that may cost about $30. Ideally, it'll be donated. And equipment rentals are usually donated, so I decided that I would note that as likely donated, so that will likely be free. I'll also have people bring their own shovels and work gloves. That's pretty standard at Eagle projects. And the custom sign with the rules on the structure, from prior experience with the custom sign company, we estimated about $50 to $100. So the maximum possible cost for this project is $685. It will likely be less. Next comes fundraising, naturally. So I have a lot of relatives that would like to donate a good deal of money to this project, and that will be a significant portion of the money that they'll raise. I'll also use the website GoFundMe so that my friends and family friends can donate online, and that'll cover a small portion of the fundraising for the project. I also have money in my personal Boy Scout account that will go towards the $685, and if necessary, I can do a cannon bottle drive and a car wash to raise the additional remaining funds. So for the project, ideally, it will be on the weekend of October 23rd, which is good because it is a long weekend for students, because Friday the 23rd is a day off of school. So before the project, I'll prepare on my own by acquiring the materials, preparing the materials by cutting, sanding, and marking them up so that it will be easy to assemble, and we'll make the tools to make sure we place the posts in the correct location. On the first day, we will dig the holes, place the posts, and set the posts in concrete. And then we will tape the area off with caution tape and stakes to make sure that nobody interferes with it or anything of the sort. And then on the next day, we will build the structure and attach the sign. The third day of the weekend, on Sunday the 25th, will be a fallback day. So if there is any work that can't be completed in these 2 days, maybe something takes too long, then we can use that day, or if there's a weather conflict. Also, this leaves several fallback weekends and weekdays before the ground freezes and we can't install something like this anymore, which is ideal. And worst case scenario, if we have a terrible streak of bad weather, I'll still be doing the project in the spring, but that's only a worst case scenario. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Councilmember Rhodes.
Excellent presentation, Michael.
Thank you.
I'll be happy to provide my truck for transporting materials, as long as there's somebody else to unload it.
Okay.
And just a general question, Do you have any idea where the name for this play structure came from?
No
Does it
idea.
have to be called what it is?
Oh, it was originally called Israeli Dodgeball. It kind of originated there, but I have no idea where Gaga Ball came from.
Strange name. Anyway, contact me for the truck.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? No? Michael, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
This was a great presentation. Okay, thank you. We have another presentation that's forthcoming, right?
We're going to keep that.
Oh, so the screen can go up? Okay, all right, we'll leave it down then. We have a motion on the floor moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, seconded by Councilmember Gearbaugh to acknowledge receipt, to accept, and to approve. Is there any additional discussion or debate? Mr. Roth?
I just want to make a comment.
Please.
I appreciate how thorough he was and did lots of planning and thought with this. And I'd like to see all projects go this smoothly.
Very good. Yes, thank you again. If there's nothing further, it's been properly moved by Rhodes, seconded by Gearbaugh to acknowledge, to accept, and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you again. Appreciate you both being here. We move on to new business item 15-170. This is Jacob Ringel, Eagle Scout Project Outhouse Replica at the Depot Museum. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 8th, 2015 memo from City Superintendent Engineer Rubel and to approve or not to approve the Eagle Scout project of Jacob Ringel to install a small replica outhouse at the historic Depot Museum. Is there a motion?
Move to acknowledge receipt and to approve.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Roth. I'll get you on the next one, Councilwoman Dillon. Who's taking the lead on this? Mr. Rubel?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Jacob Ringel is here with his mother to present the project to you and explain a little bit about the installation and the location of it. And I will flip through his presentation while he narrates it.
Jacob, the floor is yours. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Hi, I'm Jacob Ringel. I'm from Troop 416. My presentation tonight is to seek approval for my proposed Eagle Scout project of building a replica outhouse at the Depot Museum. On the screen, I have it marked. I don't know how clearly it is, but it's to the right of the livery building and to the left of the windmill there. It's going to be it's going to be an 4x8 building, time period accurate. I've got wood from the period of which the depot would have been functioning and running. I'm going to have a ladies and gents sign on there. It's going so that it'll be two-person. And so I've been working with Mr. Lane and Mr. Roble on this. This packet here was the one that I used with the Historic District Commission to help show some of what I was proposing. The roof is going to have cedar shakes, which is the same as the Velocipede shed that was constructed last year, I believe, by another scout. The wood that I have, it matches the same color of the other buildings that are currently at the site, and it's the same style of wood with a groove in it. Yeah. If you have any questions, I'll do my very best to answer them.
Very good. Well, we appreciate the report. What questions do we have from the dais? Mrs. Saibo-Koenig, please.
This is a non-functional replica?
Yes.
What precautions will you take to ensure it doesn't appear functional?
it will be locked at all times. It'll only be opened by tour guides. For if there's school groups going through, they'll open it. They'll have a key that they can go and open it up to show people, and then it will get locked back up afterwards. Or if there's someone there that would like to go and look inside of it, they can ask, and whoever's working there can go and open it up and show it for them. But beyond that, it's going to stay locked, and no one will be able to get in.
Additional questions, Mr. Roth?
How is it going to be fastened to the foundation? Because in the past, it always was a good trick to find these outhouses and place them at Halloween time where they shouldn't belong. And the schools usually got a lot of them in their schoolyards. They might even be found on top of roofs. So they become so scarce, that's why you have to build one now.
You sound like
So-
you're speaking from experience.
I've seen a lot of it done. So there's your grandparents would probably think about it and remind you younger folks, or you younger folks may be just as ingenious, so we don't want to have this one disappear at some Halloween time.
Well, the plan is to put the four-corner post into the ground about 2 feet and secure them with quickcrete so that they don't go anywhere.
That makes it non-functional because the others had to tip over to clean them out.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. Any additional questions? No? Jacob, anything more you'd like to add?
No.
No? Very good. We
Thank you
appreciate.
for letting me be here tonight.
Well, we appreciate you working to put this on the agenda. I think this is going to be a nice addition to the Depot Museum and that entire parcel, so thank you very much. Okay, very good. Thank you as well, Mr. Rubel. All right, there's a motion on the floor moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, seconded by Councilmember Roth to acknowledge and to approve. Is there any subsequent discussion? Mr. Gearboff, please.
Just to let you know, HDC did review this. Just to clarify, the original outhouse was across the railroad tracks, but unfortunately that property is under their control still, and so we couldn't be placed upon that. The only concern that HDC had would be the ability to move this shed, and that can happen even with this low foundation the way it's being put in. And again, they're reassuring us that however it will be handled, those doors will either be locked or something else will be used to block the potential use of those facilities.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember. If there's nothing further, again, it's been properly moved and seconded to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Jacob, thank you again for being here. We appreciate that very much. We move on to new business item 15-171. This is community event, Chad Tough Fun Run. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memos from Police Chief Rennick and DPW Director Fordyce and to approve or not to approve the Chad Tough Fun Run community event and to waive or not to waive the estimated fees of $517.20. Is there a motion?
Move to acknowledge receipt.
It's been moved by Councilwoman Tahar to acknowledge receipt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Gearbaugh. Obviously, as was noted during the public comment period, we have a number of people here, organizers of the event, who can speak to it. Let's start, though, with our DPW Director and Police Chief. Gentlemen, would you care to come forward and elaborate at all on the memos that you sent to council? And of course, if the city clerk worked on this as well, so Ms. Royal, if you'd like to comment, we would welcome that as well. Mr. Fordyce, we'll start with you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Also, Parks and Rec Director Carlos Scruggs worked on, and Sergeant Jay Basso worked on some minor rerouting and minimizing of costs. So worked out a route that minimizes street closures, maintains access to local businesses, and provides a safe route for the runners. So it now, rather than closing a portion of Woodland and a portion of Industrial, it's simply one lane that's being closed on Industrial, and then at the intersection of Industrial and Woodland, the runners would move on to sidewalks and trails behind the rec center. So the rec center will remain fully accessible, and local businesses will be not impeded at all. And that also minimizes both police and DPW costs quite a bit. Reduces the number of barricades needed, so now we're just down to a great number of traffic cones, and then also some police officers out there at the two intersections.
Very good. Any questions for our DPW director? No? Chief Rennick, do you care to comment at all?
I would just echo what Jeff said. Through some working with Sergeant Basso, they were able to reduce it down to 2 officers roughly for 2 hours. The possibility does exist that we be able to use an on-duty officer, but at this point in time, we're not sure. But our cost could actually even go down further than what it is at this point.
Very good. If there's nothing for the chief, oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, do you have a question for Chief Rennick?
Actually, for both of these gentlemen, I was wondering if the revised route and your comments about reduced costs are what's reflected in the items that we have before us, or is it something different than this? You want to look at it and see?
Those are mine, yep.
And then the route map is behind it also. And
yeah.
So those costs as stated there are still likely costs?
Yeah, so this map is essentially, that's the route. What's not detailed there is whether they're in the street or on the sidewalk or in one lane or all the lanes. So that's the same route, yes. And those are the correct costs.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further, Mayor Pro Tem?
That's it.
No? Okay. Ms. Royal, do you care to comment at all?
Well, my portion of the memo was to point out that we have had other events that have been required to pay the fees for the DPW and the police. And this is obviously a very important fundraiser, but it also sets up a precedent for any future ones that we would have to, if we approve one, then we would have to prove why we would not waive the fees for others. So that's why I had put in my memo that the previous ones have not been waived, because it is not just a city event, it's only a portion of the city.
Mr. Gearbaugh, please.
Yeah, I believe we had a legal opinion that told us we would be inappropriate to do that when it's a private foundation or a private organization versus being done for the city. Yeah, our attorney was here. It was probably about 3 months ago.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
No, I was just going to say that I can't remember which attorney it was.
I'm having a moment that perhaps exceeds my age, but you could be right.
I'm not recalling that specific, but I do concur with that.
It came up
position.
with, I think when Karen Ragland was here, when they were going to do their aspect, and it was not, it was for a private foundation. It wasn't for a city-sponsored event or for a activity like that, because the state of Michigan and the rules don't allow us to provide that kind of support for a private purpose.
And I will point out that I put the maximum that the DPW and the police had put down, so it could be less than the $517, but I wanted to give an idea of the maximum cost.
Thank you. Councilwoman Sidewell Koenig, did you have a comment?
I was just looking and wondering, I guess I should have asked Mr. Fordyce, the delivery cost for the cones, would volunteers be allowed to pick up and bring those back and sort of reduce this $220?
Mr. Fordyce?
Yeah. And actually, we could do that in both directions. We could just gather up the appropriate number of cones and place them at the DPW facility. They could be picked up, taken out to the street, and returned.
Okay.
Or half and half. We could take them out and then have volunteers return them.
Okay, so that'd be a way to reduce some of the cost.
Yeah.
Okay.
The costs do include volunteers setting the cones out.
Right, yes, I saw
with
that.
police directions.
Yep, I saw that. Thank you.
Mr. Fordyce, stay right there, because Councilmember Gearbaugh may have a question.
No, I was just going to mention, I thought that's how we handled it with them, was that more volunteers, and then we were using individuals to help police and do whatever, so it really basically negated all the costs that we would have incurred.
A significant portion of them, yeah.
Anything further for our DPW director? Jeff, thank you very much. Ladies, do you care to make any additional comments? We would welcome those at this time.
We're so thankful that you had us speak tonight, and I'm going to hand out a few things, and Tammy's going to speak.
going to try to do this a little better than last time, get a little emotional sometimes. I completely understand what you're saying, too. If the waiving of fees is something that's not possible, I understand. The other thought was the possibility of being sponsors, having the city be a sponsor. I don't know if that is a possibility. So just thought we'd throw that out there. This is the second year for this event. Last year, friends basically put it together in support of our family. This year, the event is benefiting the Chad Tuff Foundation, which is a foundation that my husband and I just recently lost, that will benefit pediatric brain tumor research, and specifically DIPG. So we have at this point very, very good support already. We have over 350 people registered and paid to walk, and we expect the number to be well over 500 by the time the event starts on October 3rd. So basically, I just want to thank you guys for your consideration. I do understand the complications, and if it doesn't work out, that's fine. We really appreciate all the support that the city of Saline and the community has given us. So I don't know if there are any questions.
Thank you. That was very gracious. Are there any questions for the applicant? No? Very good. Thank you. Any subsequent discussion? So we have a motion. I think we started with a motion, if I'm not mistaken, moved by Tahar, seconded by Gearbaugh to acknowledge receipt. Is that correct, council members?
Yes.
Yes, okay. If there's nothing further on that, then we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of acknowledging the receipt of the memos from Police Chief Rennick and DPW Director Fordyce signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Subsequently, the chair would entertain an amended motion, or of course, the way the motion would read currently would be to approve or not to approve the Chad Tuff Fun Run community event and to waive or not waive the estimated fees in the amount of $517.20. Let me mention this before I ask for a mover and a seconder. And I am not doubting what Mr. Gearbaugh says. Since our next meeting is just a week away as opposed to 2 weeks away, I'm wondering if we can get clarification on that from our attorney. And secondarily, if we can't waive fees, whether it is possible to be a sponsor or to structure our support in a different way. Now, noting that the applicant, I'm sure, would like approval on this to begin organizing the event, although I think it's probably organized as good as it can be, and solicit additional sponsors, I would be amenable to approving the event and then maybe revisiting the fees at our subsequent meeting. But, of course, that's a decision that will need to be made by council. Mayor Pro Tem.
If I could make another comment before, I understand the concerns about the possibility of setting a precedent, and so I will offer to pay the fees, whatever those turn out to be.
It's very gracious.
And I would hope DPW and Police Department are kind to me. And that way we can not waive the fees as part of our motion here.
Okay. And I would probably be happy to join you in that, Mr. Rhodes, so you don't
Okay,
have
thank
to
you.
put the entire 517 yourself. I'd be happy to contribute. I would still, however, though, as a matter of policy, like to verify with legal counsel.
Yeah, I will still check.
Okay, if there are no objections to that. You good with that?
No?
Okay. Ms. Sibocana, you're okay with that? Yes.
I have a concern that we have a policy that by a set date, if anybody plans to have an event, that we're going to subsidize or waive fees. There was a deadline for that. Have these people applied for such a thing, this event, prior to this occasion?
They did not know that they were going to be going through the city of Saline. So they had planned it through Pittsfield Township, and then they came to us, and it wasn't within the 45 days, but it was very close, and then we didn't have a council meeting for like 3 weeks.
Okay.
So it wasn't totally their fault that it's coming to you so late.
I just want to point that out. I also want to point out another thing. Thinking of the city of Saline taxpayers, I'm not sure if this is a prudent way of spending their tax money that they're paying by sponsoring such events. The people here mention, if they mention where they're from Pittsfield Township. So I'm talking about most of the people, except for one, that advocated for such. So I think that it's not fair for the Saline taxpayers to sponsor and write off the payment for all these activities when residents outside of Saline are using it and promoting it and advocating it and using our facilities. If they do such, I think they should pay for them.
Mr. Rhodes, would you like to make a motion, sir?
I would move to approve the Chad Tough Fun Run community event and to not waive the estimated fees of $517.20.
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, seconded by Councilmember Gearbaugh to approve the Chad Tough Fun Run community event and to not waive the fees estimated at $517.20. Any discussion? Mr. Rhodes.
As previously stated, there will be no city funds, City of Saline funds expended on this particular event. It will be subsidized by myself with a contribution from Mayor Morrow. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for the gracious offer, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, and I would just say that there's certainly no doubt that this event will benefit a very noble and worthy cause. And I want to compliment the ladies for coming this evening. I am impressed and amazed by your courage and your commitment, and I applaud you for that. So thank you. Thank you very much. Would you like to make one additional comment? We would welcome that at this time.
I just want to sincerely thank you so much for your offer. And I also want to tell you, Mr. Roth, that I completely understand what you're saying. And but to that, I can tell you that probably more than half of the people coming to the race will be from Saline. All of our kids attend Saline schools. We spend a lot of time in Saline, even though we live in Pittsfield Township. And I can tell you that our community has rallied around this family so much, and they love this family, and this community has come together because of it. And this event is another way for our community to come together, and that's why we're here, and that's why we want to just not only help Chad, but to help other families with this terrible disease. And so we understand your point of view, but we also want you to know that everyone is involved in this. So thank you.
Thank you. We will proceed to vote then. It's been properly moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, seconded by Gearbaugh to approve and to not waive. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Ladies, again, thank you for your time this evening. We move on to new business item 15-172. This is Saline Schools Vending Services Agreement with the Rec Center. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the August 29, 2015 memo from Parks and Rec Director Scruggs and to approve or not to approve the renewal of the vending service agreement with Saline area schools for an additional 3 years. Is there a motion?
Move to acknowledge receipt and to approve.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. Ms. Scruggs, the floor is yours.
Thank you. This program, I think everyone's fairly familiar with it, but the vending machines at the rec center are owned and operated by the Young Adult Program, which is a program based out of the Saline area schools. Special Education Director Kevin Musson and I worked out this plan about 5 years ago. It's a business opportunity for the Young Adult Program where they make money for the program and they provide the service to us. Plus we do get a commission, a 30% commission, or excuse me, 25% commission on all the sales. So it's actually, I call it a triple win. It's a job opportunities, money making for the schools, and a payback commission for the rec center. They've done an outstanding job. They have excellent staff that oversee the program. The young adults do a great job working and they're learning, and we're here to ask for approval to renew this ongoing contract.
Very good. Thank you, Director Scruggs. Are there questions for our Parks and Recreation Director? Excuse me. No, pretty cut and dry. Thank you kindly. Any subsequent discussion? I think you said it all, Ms. Scruggs. I think it's a wonderful partnership and mutually beneficial. If there's nothing further, it's been properly moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, seconded by Councilwoman Dillon, to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 15-173. This is PSMI Sales Agreement. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 9th, 2015 memo from City Manager Campbell and to approve or not to approve the sale of 0.75 acres of city-owned property to PSMI in the amount of $25,000 and to authorize or not authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the purchase agreement. Is there a motion?
Move to approve and to authorize.
Can we start by acknowledging receipt,
And
Mr. Gilbo?
acknowledging, yeah.
Thank you, sir. It's been
I was looking
properly
for all the
moved-
words in there.
Yeah, properly moved by Gearbaugh, Councilmember Gearbaugh, to acknowledge receipt, to approve, and to authorize. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll let Mr. Roth be the second on that. Mr. Campbell, do you want to go over your memo dated September the 9th?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You all may recall at the August 17th work session with City Council, PSMI made a proposal request to purchase adjacent property to their facility located at the Sauk Trail Business Park. They're hoping to expand in the future, however, they will need additional parking, and so this property that is formerly was going to be used as a potential secondary ingress-egress to the Oaks development, but when Hopper Drive was put in, that was no longer needed, and so this piece of property it's unplatted, and it does have part of it, the very west end of it has a utility easement as well, has city utilities in it, but they're only requesting that to purchase a portion per the attachment, per the agreement, at the proposed amount of $25,000. And I do believe that there are folks from PSMI here to answer any questions or make comments.
Gentlemen, would you like to make a comment? We would welcome that if that's your wish. Not necessary, but it's your opportunity.
My name is Manoj Sachdeva. I'm a longtime resident of the city of Saline, over 30 years, and just here we're expanding our facilities here, and we're purchasing this land so we can build parking spots for the additional 20 employees that we'll be hiring.
Very good. Are there any questions for the applicant or for our city manager? Pretty cut and dry. Of course, we did discuss this at length at a work meeting. Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. It's been properly moved by Gearboss, seconded by Roth, to acknowledge receipt, to approve, and to authorize. Is there any subsequent discussion? I would just say that, this approach is in keeping with our history, which is trying our best to be accommodating and helpful to our businesses. And I should note that PSMI has been particularly generous to this community in recent years, and we are in your debt. We appreciate that very much. But of equal importance, we are very, very happy and very pleased that things are going well for you and that you're bringing on additional employees. So I enthusiastically endorse this motion. I think it's a win-win, and I wish you many years of continued success in our city. If there's nothing further, it's been properly moved by Councilmember Gearbaugh and then seconded by Councilmember Roth to approve or to acknowledge receipt, to approve, and to authorize. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. We move on to new business item 15-174. This is a request to waive tax bill late fees at 810 Newcastle Street. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 9, 2015 memo from City Treasurer Bennett and the September 2nd, 2015 letter from Jaya and B. Roger Natterjan, requesting waiver of tax penalty and interest on real property taxes at 810 Newcastle Street. And if I mispronounce that name, my sincerest apologies. Is there a motion to acknowledge receipt?
Move to acknowledge.
Thank you, Councilwoman Cybo Koenig. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. Ms. Bennett, Treasurer Bennett, do you care to make any comment this evening?
If there's any questions?
Are there any questions for our city treasurer? No questions? Well, that was easy enough. Okay. Any subsequent discussion?
The motion does not ask for any action.
Correct.
Just acknowledging.
Yep. If council wanted to take additional action, Mayor Pro Tem, a member would have to offer a motion from the floor. Okay? So the motion it's been properly moved by Councilwoman Cybo Koenig, seconded by Councilwoman Dillon to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Is there a desire to request or to to submit or offer a subsequent motion? Okay. Then we'll move on to new business item 15-175. This is MERS Years of Service Purchase Policy. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 9th, 2015 memo from City Treasurer Bennett and to approve or not to approve the purchase of additional service credit policy for MERS members. Is there a motion?
And move to acknowledge receipt and to approve the policy.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. I'll catch you on the next one, Ms. Tahar. Ms. Bennett. And of course, this is also an issue we had a work session on, but Ms. Bennett was asked to do some additional work, and we welcome your comments now.
Okay, so as you may recall and discussed in our work session, we reviewed the ability for members of our defined benefit to our defined benefit retirement program, the ability that they have right now to purchase up to an additional 5 years of service credit. And there were some questions like how many people we have. So currently we have, it's in here. We have 49 active members in our defined benefit, and out of that, we've had 3 of our active members that have requested, and over the course of the years, we've had 9 people request this. Obviously, 6 of them have went on for retirement, and 3 of them are still in our remaining workforce in our defined benefit. So that takes the number of people who could come and request it down to 46. I did work with the attorney's office to come up with a policy, and as the council elaborated, there's a very good value invested into our employees, and we appreciate their longevity, and we don't really want them to be able to leave early. However, we don't want to discourage the fact that if there are extenuating circumstances, that we would not, we're not closed to those. So this policy does allow for a general statement saying that we would prefer, we as the city council would prefer not to allow this unless there are extenuating circumstances that that individual person could bring forward. Are there any questions or anything that didn't get addressed?
Thank you, Ms. Bennett. Are there questions for our city treasurer? You did a nice job on this. Well, that was easy enough. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm going to stick around for the next one.
Yeah, why don't you? Any subsequent discussion on this? No? Okay. It's properly moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, seconded by Councilwoman Dillon to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Moving on to new business item 15-176, this is payroll services. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the August 28th, 2015 memo from City Treasurer Bennett and to approve or not to approve entering into an agreement with Paylocity for payroll services.
Move to acknowledge and to approve.
Thank you, Councilwoman Tahar. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Cybo Koenig. Ms. Bennett, we would welcome any comments you have on your, from your memo of August the 28th.
Okay, well, I just wanted to really quickly touch base on the fact that we have entered into with paychecks, and it has been a good time-saving tool. The Affordable Health Care Act is requiring some reporting that at the point when our current provider wanted to provide that service to us, even the IRS wasn't exactly sure what reporting was going to be needed. And so at this point, in my payroll service, that will be something that I would have to contract out individually or take on myself within my office. And in addition to that concern, because now it is kind of a intense reporting that we will have to do for the retirement benefits for healthcare, effective on the W-2s for this year for our employees. In addition to that, we've had a couple new hires, and we've been kind of piecemealing the way we do a time sheet that the people put together, and our new hires are being kept by hand manually. And because we do have a number of new hires, we're almost doing more by hand than we are through the old system. And I've worked with the current provider trying to get us something that is work and affordable, and we decided that we could try to find another time management system that could import into our current system. And what we found is that the other payroll service providers included the whole package at a much more affordable cost. So that, and we are going to try to initiate this to have this change take place within the last quarter of this year so that the Affordable Health Care Act will be included and reported properly. the 3 bids that came in were very competitive, but the Paylocity one, the initial setup cost was much more, I don't want to say cheaper, but much more accountable by an individual basis. Instead of being a flat rate, it was like per employee, and so when we worked it out, it was going to be a little bit more affordable. And she also, the company came very highly recommended by a number of different municipalities, in addition to the company who, Kapnick Insurance, who we work with the affordable health care. And back when we were talking about the whole affordable health care and what the reporting, he thought for sure that this company would be able to help me out, if not as a payroll provider, but as a separate entity just for this. So they come very highly recommended, and customer service is very important when you're trying to accommodate payroll needs. So I'm very pleased with the Paylocity and look forward to the transition.
Very good. Thank you, Treasurer Bennett. Are there questions for our city treasurer? Mr. Gearboff, please.
Are there any other communities around here that are using it?
Using Paylocity?
Yeah, which ones are, just curious, Chelsea, Ann Arbor?
Oh,
anything else?
I did a listserv, and I had a number of people, I can't tell you right, I didn't print off who did it, but I didn't get any feedback from our locals.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I was just curious to know who else is actually using this to understand how successful they've been with it. Just, it seems like paycheck was always the key thing to go to, and now the pricing and everything seems like a big change.
It was a huge, and we've not had an increase in pricing through paychecks throughout the whole entire time until this affordable health care, which they wanted an upfront fee, and then they said, you know, in addition to, oh yeah, we're going to do a price increase, and it was quite a substantial price increase.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gearboff. Anything further? Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes.
Not a question, but I want to thank Ms. Bennett and whoever else worked with you for taking the initiative to do this research and come up with not only a better price, but better service. So thank you.
You're welcome. And the very nice thing about this is going to make the employees so much more, they'll have so much more access to their information. So if you're sitting at the bank, I mean, everything's downloadable on an app now. So if you're at the bank and you need information, they'll be able to get it. So it'll be much user-friendly for the employees as well.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Bennett.
Thank you.
If there's nothing further, it's been properly moved by Tahar, seconded by Councilwoman Cybo Koenig to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 15-177, proposed ordinance number 778, rezoning of 407 North Harris Street. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 10th, 2015 memo from Assistant City Clerk DeHaan and to accept or not to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve or not to approve the proposed ordinance number 778 for rezoning of 407 North Harris Street from I-1 Industrial to R1C Single Family Residential. Is there a motion?
Move to acknowledge receipt, to accept, and to approve.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Cybo Koenig. Mr. Rubel, do you want to start us off on this, or Mr. Campbell?
We're going to, Gary and I are going to tag team, I
Okay.
believe.
Mr. Rubel, the floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor. The applicant and his wife are here tonight. That's Mr. Brookshire and his wife, who own the property at 407 and also have interest in the whole former Johnson Controls office building and parking lots area. And so he can answer any questions relative to their rationale and request. City staff performed the zoning analysis for the zoning amendment request. The matter was taken to the Planning Commission as stated, and they approved it by a majority vote. And just to summarize the report in general as I presented it to the Planning Commission, there are a number of considerations here that all point to a favorable outcome for Mr. Brookshire, and that that lot and the two adjacent are old non-conforming uses in a former industrial zone that has been in transition to non-industrial and to a higher general purpose of use. On that block, we also have the depot, which obviously is changing use from its former designation. It's now a historic site. And then the 2 lots the city purchased from Mr. Randazzo, those actually were rezoned also to office service per a prior study. So that's a block in transition. First, looking at the historic plat, the historic plat, the 1871 Bennett's edition, you can see that entire block was actually platted to be single-family residential lots. The 3 house lots on Harris Street there, including 407, you can see are all small lots built with residences, never did convert to industrial, and the lots themselves could not be made into industrial lots because industrial lots are required to have a minimum lot width much greater than this, setbacks much greater than house lots, and so it'd be impossible to put an industrial facility on that lot or the other 2 residential lots. The master plan itself in 3 areas supports the request. It shows that the existing land use is residential. The sub-area plan, Central Village sub-area, shows it as generally being residential. And the future land use map, which I didn't copy an excerpt of that because I had mentioned it and covered it in the report, but I can circulate this and you can see where I've marked 407 North Harris on the future land use map, showing that the master plan intends this to be a residential lot. I know there was concern that this might be spot zoning. However, from our experience here, there's been several instances when we adopted the D1, D2, when we rezoned the Randazzo lots to office service, and even when we rezoned or set a zoning on the Lee-Bear property when it was annexed. Yeah, that was a large single lot. And so there is a history of zoning single lots as needed because the master plan takes care of the guide. And then what we do is when the applicants wish or their desire to move forward to a better use, then it's possible to have it rezoned by amendment. That's it in general.
Thank you, Mr. Rubel. Mr. Campbell, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I would just, I guess the only thing that I would add is that Mr. Rubel talked about being the compatibility, and typically when you're rezoning, you look at 3 areas. Is it compatible with the master plan? Yes, it is. Is it compatible with the neighboring uses, neighboring area? And 3 sides are similar or like residential development. And then is compatible with the existing utilities. And so having said that, those 3 items certainly are agreeable with that.
Are there questions for these 2 gentlemen? Either one, Mr. Gearbaugh, please.
Mr. Campbell, you indicated that you said adjacent 3 sides. The adjacent 3 sides to this property would continue to be I-2.
I'm talking from, if you look at the property to the east, properties, not maybe the exact lots, because those are all residential lots that front on Harris, except for the part that goes in, the parking area, the storage area, and behind the former Johnson Controls building, of course. But you have facing it across the street to the east, you have residential. You have on the south, on North Harris, you have more residential. And then north, you have along Clark Street as well as further up North Harris is residential. So that's what I mean by that. So, but again, it is and it is compatible, as I mentioned, with the master plan calling for the future rezoning of those properties for residential use. And then, of course, as I had mentioned, the utilities, water and sewer such, they wouldn't need to be upgraded or anything to continue providing those services.
So at this time, why would we not support or look to reclassify those other 2 lots? Because as it stands now, they are not compatible for I-2 zoning, according to Mr. Rubel's comment just now.
Sure, certainly, staff could contact those folks and see if that's what they would like to do.
Because my concern with this one, I mean, the real reason why we're doing this is because a bank won't provide a mortgage, although the land could be sold on a land contract or for cash. Normally we look at it hardships. I understand that this was intent that we wanted to go that route. I just have a concern of piecemealing it like this when potentially we really should be looking at doing it all at the same time.
Sure, we could, and that certainly is a good point. We could certainly work with those folks and see if they have an interest in doing so.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that we would put the financial hardship on the one individual, as I think was referred to at the previous planning commission meeting. So how we would ever look at this is, I think, a concern of how we want that neighborhood to develop, and if it's something that we can benefit for the whole community, that's how we should look at this.
Sure, certainly.
Mr. Gearboff, if I can stick on that for just a moment, because I want to see if I can get consensus on that point. Obviously, as you know, based on my vote last Wednesday at the Planning Commission meeting, I'll be voting in favor of the motion that's currently been offered. But I think actually everyone is in agreement with what the long-term outcome should be. So I'm very much amenable to your request of having staff contact the adjacent property owners to see if we can get the ball rolling on some additional rezoning. So I'm assuming you're in favor of that.
Yeah, I just don't want to have it be 5, 10, 15 years down the road.
Sure.
I'd rather have it be, as long as we're doing it now, and if the issue is cost and everything, that we basically address it. I think this has been an issue that we have a tendency to do something without bringing everybody on board, and I know they had notification, but I don't think we may have communicated this as well as I think we should.
I would be recommending that staff move expeditiously to contact the adjacent property owners. So it sounds like you're amenable to that. Ms. Cybo Koenig?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Rhodes?
Yes, I moved this motion because I've always thought all those lots on North Harris ought to be residential.
Okay. Ms. Tahar?
Could someone clarify for me what, if any, effect rezoning would have on the other 2 property owners? Would there be any tax consequences, any consequences at all?
Not that I would envision.
They're just, as Mr. Rubel's memo states, they're currently a non-conforming use because they're residential use in an industrial. And so, as the folks at 407 has stated, because they are non-conforming, typically your loan institutions aren't going to provide financing for a property that's a non-conforming use.
And Mr. Hart, just to be clear, I'm not asking for anyone to commit to rezoning. What I'm asking for now is to see if everyone's amenable to having staff contact the adjacent property owners.
Right, I just wanted to know.
Yep.
There are often hidden
Sure.
consequences, so
Sure.
I just want to clarify.
You have no objection, though, to
So
staff?
I'm okay, yes.
Okay. Mr. Roth?
I would like to see we follow the precedent we set at the last council meeting. I'd be happy to second a friendly motion or amendment to this, so the job would get done, that these people are really contacted. So if Mr. Gearboff would make such a motion, I'd be happy to make that motion, instead just by consensus, that we do it properly.
Well, there's nothing improper about doing it by
Right.
consensus. I see your point, but there's nothing improper about doing it by consensus. Mr. Gearboff, Chair will obviously entertain.
My concern is expanding this to include those other 2 properties, because I think if we don't try and address it all at this point, I mean, really, it would benefit all those 3 property owners to be able to mortgage them, and so they don't sit there or potentially fall into kind of a disrepair at the result of not being able to sell those properties.
So let's do, you want to make an amendment to the motion that, I don't know how to word this, in addition, that the adjacent properties will be contacted by city staff to see if they're amenable to rezoning?
Yep.
Okay?
I will second that.
You want to read that back? I know I just kind of worded that.
In addition, that the adjacent properties be notified. That's all I got.
That the adjacent properties be contacted to see if they're amenable to rezoning.
Mr. Mayor?
It's not Shakespeare, but, yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Please.
If I may? I think we should specify which properties.
Okay, I'm sure Mr. Gearboff and Mr. Roth have no objections to that.
Nope.
So that would be 153 Bennett Street and 403 Harris Street. Is
That can be in parentheses.
She said 153?
Repeat that, Ms. Tahar.
Well, looking at the map excerpt here, I believe that would be then 153 Bennett and 403 Harris.
That's my understanding. Is that correct, Mr. Rubel?
That is correct.
Okay. You want to reread that then?
In addition, that the adjacent properties be contacted to see if they are amenable to rezoning, and that's for 153 Bennett and 403 Harris.
That's moved by Gearboss, seconded by Roth. Is that correct, gentlemen? Correct. Okay, very good. Again, we'll vote on the amendment first. We do have the applicants here. Do you care to make any comment this evening? It's certainly not necessary, but since you came, I'll provide you the opportunity. Perfect, okay. Any subsequent discussion or questions on the amendment? No? Okay, it's been properly moved then by Gearboss, seconded by Roth. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Now back to the full motion, which of course is now amended. Moved by Rhodes, seconded by Cybo Koenig, to acknowledge, accept, and to approve. If there is no additional discussion, all those in favor of the amended motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Mr. Rubel, thank you very much. I guess you can stay put because you're up next. For new business item 15-178, amendment to North Harris Street project. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 8th, 2015 memo from City Superintendent Engineer Rubel and to authorize or not authorize an amendment to the Harris Street construction agreement in the amount of $272,767 to include Echo Court, Park Place, and the Rec Center walks and parking lot. Is there a motion?
Move to acknowledge receipt and to authorize.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Tahar. Mr. Rubel, the floor is yours to cover your memo of September the 8th.
Yes, well, when we approved the FY16 budget, we knew there were going to be funds available yet to add projects on, depending on how the bids came in for the Harris Street project. And subsequent to the excellent audit results, we also know that we do have the funds available. Besides, they are budgeted. As you can see, two of the add-on projects, Echo Court and Park Place, came in under what the estimated budget amounts were, because when you add projects to an existing contract, as we would here by amendment, you can forego, the design fees and contract fees and things of that nature. Plus, the on this project, city staff put together the work plan, the quantities. We did the estimating. And our summer inspector will also perform the inspection, so you can see there's some savings there from both of those measures. And then the rec center project was in the budget also to the tune of $150,000. And the good news there, even though it shows it to be $15,000 more, is that when we did our rough estimate, we were just going to repair and replace some of the concrete walks around the facility, widen the walk in the back so the chlorine delivery truck wasn't on the grass and gravel, and then rebuild the entrance drive and drop-off area and the plaza sidewalk. But when I put the estimates together, the new estimate based on some of the bids unit prices in the Higgins contract, it came much short of the $150,000. So then, Carla had wished us to do the north parking lot, and that sort of came true, because when I did the total estimate and then also confirmed it with quotation from D.N. Higgins, you can see we're real close. So we get to do the north parking lot, which is the oldest of the three lots, as sort of a bonus here, and get it done a year ahead of time versus waiting to budget for it and do it next year. So we'll be a year ahead of the game on our restoration work at the rec center.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Rubel. Are there any questions for our city engineer? Mr. Gearbaugh, please.
Because Higgins is working for us right now, I just want to know, where are we on status in terms of them completing the Harris Street? Are they on schedule? Yeah. Everything going to be done before the fall? All that?
Yeah, we're pretty much on schedule. The end date would have been the end of September, but there were a few issues with the water line and that, so it's about a week more. So it'll be into first week of October probably. And some of that is the final work, like putting up signs and some pavement marking, which is very inconsequential.
But their performance so far has been right on contract. We're
pretty
pleased
good
with what they're doing,
right.
expecting. Thank
Yep, everything's looking good.
Anything else, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Nope.
Thank you, sir. Are there any additional comments, questions for Mr. Rubel?
Oh, yeah, just one other.
Yeah, please.
The $150,000 for the parking lot is coming out of the fund balance for the rec center? Okay, so I wanted to make sure there was no additional transfer in anticipation. Thank you.
Mr. Rubel, thank you. Any subsequent discussion? Appreciate everyone's work on this. I mean, all these things need to be done. There'll be good improvements beneficial to the community. So thank you for your work. We'll proceed to vote then. It's been properly moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, seconded by Councilwoman Tahar, to acknowledge receipt and to authorize. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Moving on to new business item 14-134. This is wastewater treatment plant Phase 2 contractor's application for payment number 1. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 9th, 2015 memo from Timothy Aird of Tetra Tech and to authorize or not authorize pay request number 1 for wastewater treatment plant number 2 rehab project in the amount of $114,717.86. Is there a motion?
Moved.
I'll let Mr. Rhodes be the mover. Mr. Rhodes, were you planning to move to acknowledge receipt and to authorize?
I was.
Thank you, sir. And was that your intent as well, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yeah, I'll second that
Thank you.
motion.
Mr. Gearbaugh is the second. Mr. Rubel, do you want to go over your memo of September the 9th?
Well, I just put a tagline on the top of the memo that Mr. Ard wrote because basically this first pay estimate is for some lump sum payments of more or less us buying into some of the equipment purchases that have to be paid in advance and on sort of on deposit or first advance to some of the vendors here to pay for equipment as was prescribed by the contract agreement. And so it's just a standard payment, even though there hasn't been work accomplished, it's for materials being delivered, and some of it had to be prepaid.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Rubel. Questions for our city engineer? Mr. Roth, please.
I've got a question about this Phase 2. There's a fence proposed to be put along so they can start more work on the Salt Springs Park. Where does this fit in timeline and so on? I've made a suggestion in earlier meetings that we would expedite that so that other project with the parks could continue with it. And I'd like to see a timeline that that they would know.
Right, right. The contractor has a timeline. In fact, he's done an excellent job. He has a spreadsheet that's like 3-4 pages long in color of every sequence of almost every piece of equipment that goes in there and all the trade work. And so if you go down there, and I looked at it carefully, I looked at it's June next summer that they will be able to install the fence in sequence with coordination with all of their other work. And I passed that along to Mr. Peters. And also, you know, we would be in the process this winter to do some pre-planning for future improvements. So we won't know until next spring anyway whether our pre-planning would show whether or not there is actually going to be a walkway installed next year. But certainly installing the fence in June should not be a hardship to the park project.
Anything further, Councilmember Roth?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Dillon, did you have a question?
It was regarding the fence.
Okay, very good. Anything further for Mr. Rubel? No, that it's been properly moved by Rhodes, seconded by Gearbaugh to authorize, or to acknowledge receipt and to authorize. If there's no further debate or discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Next is new business item 15-179, purchase of 4x4 one-ton dump truck. This is a series of 2 motions from DPW Director Fordyce. Motion A is a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 4th, 2015 memo from DPW Director Fordyce and to authorize or not authorize the purchase of a 2016 GMC Sierra 3500 HD 4x4. I think that should be classic. Is that a typo?
Chassis.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. From Red Holland Buick GMC in the amount of $27,050.95.
Move to acknowledge and to authorize.
Thank you, Councilwoman Tahar. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. Director Fordyce, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Currently in our fleet, we have 2 two-wheel drive, what we call small dump trucks, basically 1-ton dumps. They're used a lot for pothole patching and cemetery operations and also tree trimming and park operations. We need to replace one of them. They're both fairly old, and we would like to upgrade to a four-wheel drive. We've been having problems in the cemetery maneuvering in there and slipping and sliding when the truck is loaded. So four-wheel drive, and in addition to the locking differential that we specified in this one, should take care of that. Again, we utilize the MyDeal, the State of Michigan MyDeal bidding program. Saves us a lot of time and effort, and always gives us a very good deal. So,
Thank you, Director Fordyce. Are there any questions for our DPW Director? Seems pretty easy. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Dillon?
I just have a quick question. Jeff, what is the value of the 2001 Ford that you're going to sell? Do you have any idea? Is it going to offset the difference?
It will help. Yeah, in addition to auctioning off that truck, we have a number of spare parts for Crown Vic police cruisers that we only have one left of, so we're getting ready to sell off an engine and a transmission. So between that dump truck and these spare parts, we very well may cover this whole overrun here.
Anything further for Mr. Fordyce? No? Jeff, why don't you stay put? Any subsequent discussion on motion A? No, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved, by Tahar, seconded by Dillon, to acknowledge receipt and to authorize. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Motion B will be a motion to authorize or not authorize the purchase of a stainless steel dump body for the truck and trailers, from Truck and Trailer Specialties, in the amount of $14,332. Is there a motion?
Move to authorize.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. Mr. Fordyce, do you want to speak to this issue at all?
This would be the dump body and upgrading equipment that goes on the chassis that you just authorized. It includes a lighting package and recommending the stainless steel body. We get pretty good mileage out of our steel bodies, but we have spent an awful lot of time doing welding and rust repairs on those, expecting to get significantly better lifespan out of the stainless steel one. Truck and Trailer Specialties is also a MyDeal contract award winner and a company that we've done business with in the past, upgrading some of our other dump trucks, and have had good performance from them.
Very good. Any questions for our DPW Director? Ms. Tahar?
Yes, thank you. So am I correct in assuming that part of the reason the cost is higher than the budget is because of this better stainless steel?
Yes, yeah, the stainless steel upgrade is $1,572. So that, that was part of that $5,700 over.
Okay. Seems like a wise move.
Any additional questions? No? Any subsequent debate or discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Councilwoman, it's been properly moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, and moved by and seconded by Councilwoman Janet Dillon to authorize. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Moving on to thank you, Jeff. Moving on to new business item 15-180, this is Sesquicentennial Task Force appointments. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 10th, 2015 memo from Mayor Marl and to approve or not to approve the establishment of, it's not 3, it's 6. That's a typo. Sorry about that. 6 sesquicentennial subcommittees and to approve or not to approve the appointments to the subcommittees as recommended by Mayor Marl. Noting again that the number 3 has changed to 6.
Move to acknowledge, to approve, and to approve.
Thank you, Councilwoman Tahar. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. Well, my memo of September the 11th pretty much speaks for itself. I hope it was straightforward. The only thing I would note is I want to thank Chairperson Lance Holland, our staff liaison, City Treasurer Bennett, and all the members of the regular task force for their work in developing these subcommittees, but also their work on recruiting the members. I think it's a good group. I will note that as their mission and work evolves, there may be the need to increase membership and appoint additional people. So don't be surprised if you come to a subsequent meeting and I am requesting that additional individuals be appointed to the various subcommittees. But again, overall, I'm very pleased with the way they have developed, and I thank all the people for volunteering to help us work and organize to celebrate our 150th anniversary as a community in 2016. Are there any questions? Mr. Gearbaugh?
What's subcommittee number 3 where it says tours represented by Needhammer? Is that a company we're going to be
I
hiring?
think you're looking at the wrong memo, Mr.
Oh,
Gearbaugh. I think
sorry.
this one dated.
Seeing
September-
names all over them.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. That's my mistake. That shouldn't really have been included in the packet. That just provides contact information for those subcommittee members whose contact information we have.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yep. Anything further? There's no discussion. We'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Tahar, seconded by Dillon, to acknowledge receipt and to approve, noting the establishment of 6 subcommittees, not 3. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 15-181, Police Department. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 10th, 2015 memo from Mayor Marl and to authorize or not authorize the hiring of Mr. John Hess to conduct a review of the Saline Police Department at an amount not to exceed $5,000. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Tahar. Well, again, I tried to be straightforward and focus on the details that I thought were important in my memo from September 10th without being too verbose. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and I would welcome any comments from the dais. No? Did you want to comment at all, Mr. Hart?
Yes.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot,
No, I was just waiting to see if there were any questions first. I fully support this for a number of reasons. I think that we all feel that perhaps a review of this kind might well have been done several years ago to our benefit, but that we didn't see that at the time. I think this will be highly beneficial for all of us, the department, for the city, and for citizens. And based on my conversation with Mr. Hess, as you mentioned in your memo, and also reading the references that I requested about him and received, I believe that he is an excellent candidate to do this work for us. And I believe that he can have our full support.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. The only other thing that I would add is first, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Ms. Tahar for her assistance on this initiative. I have a lot of confidence in Mr. Hess's ability, as well as Mr. Terry Tobias, who will be offering support and counsel when Mr. Hess deems it appropriate. I think both bring a lot of expertise, knowledge, and integrity to the table. And I'm confident that they will do an outstanding job. I want to add, and this is outlined in the memo, I have no preconceived notions as to what they will find or what they will recommend. And I am 100% committed to ensuring that the process is objective and independent and fair. And therefore, as soon as Mr. Hess begins his review, I will not be commenting on this issue until he submits a report, at which time I suspect all of us will have a robust and substantive discussion, on how best to move forward. But again, I obviously wouldn't have put this on the agenda if I didn't support it. And like I said earlier, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just clarification under mission and scope. It says in one part, it says, in the event that there are any allegations, new or pre-existing, that in the reviewer's professional judgment he believes warrants further attention by some other entity, he is empowered to contact that other entity. That means he will directly contact them. There will be no intermediary type aspect here. So it will go directly if it needed to be brought into any DA or Michigan State Police or
Correct.
anything.
And Ms. Tahar can certainly elaborate on this because she and I have had, we've talked at length about this particular issue. And I actually think that's best, Mr. Gearbaugh, considering his years of experience and expertise. I think if he were to find anything that warranted contacting the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department or Michigan State Police, that he be empowered to do that. Again, based on his level of expertise and experience. And I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Ms. Tahar.
Yes. One of the, I would just add, I agree entirely, and I think, I also want to say, I agree with having all of us step back while he's doing his work and not interfere in any way. I would also say, I don't believe he would allow us to interfere. Based on my conversation with him, one of the things he said to me is that if you ask the question, you have to be ready to hear the answer. And I took that to mean he's going to tell us, give us his unbiased and professional opinion, and he's not going to be, not open to being swayed by pressure from anyone else. And along those same lines, I think that we need to give him, I had some questions about this particular aspect of directly contacting outside agencies for investigations. But in thinking about it, I believe that is an important part of the package of letting him do his work and use his professional expertise to do the job without any interference from us.
Anything else?
The only other concern that I have is that it states that, we'll report directly through the mayor. I believe we should have a second individual.
I'm happy to include whoever you recommend, Mr. Gearborn, if you're comfortable with having that be Ms. Tahar, since she's helped me in this process, I'm absolutely fine with that.
I think that would be appropriate if she's willing to serve in that role.
Yes, I am. And I will also say, another topic that I discussed with Mr. Hess when I had a phone conversation with him was about inclusiveness in communication. And he is very committed to being open and transparent. So he's not at all in favor of excluding people from the results of his work. So I think he wouldn't permit us to do that, but I'm perfectly happy to serve in that capacity.
I'd feel more comfortable that we had two individuals, not only to protect the city, but to protect the mayor and just to have that representation. The only other aspect of when we get the final product, and this may be a question just from general counsel review, that review of that report, how will it be presented? At an open council meeting, a closed session? I think this is going to be the concerns that'll come out of this is how do we handle these aspects? And I think the public wants the concern from how are we going to be transparent and provide as much information as we can to who would be the most interested parties.
Right. Well, and I think you allude to something which is fundamental, that at a certain juncture, the public has a right and should have the expectation that they're allowed to digest this, review it, and understand what the recommendations are. So I agree. Anything further? No? Okay. It's been properly moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, seconded by Councilwoman Tahar, to acknowledge receipt and to authorize. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. You'll recall that we added one item to the agenda this evening under new business. It's item 15-182, ventilation upgrades. I will note that per council guidelines, which were adopted in the early 2000s and then amended and I think improved, I believe in 2013 we try our best and staff tries their best not to spring things on us, but in speaking with Director Scruggs, and City Manager Campbell just a half hour before the meeting this evening, it became apparent that this item at minimum needs to be talked about and considered. So Ms. Scruggs, do you want to begin this discussion? I would also reference again that passed out at the beginning of tonight's meeting is a memo from Boone and Dar Incorporated dated September the 14th that directly relates to this item. Is that correct, Ms. Scruggs?
That is correct.
Okay. The floor is yours.
Well, I apologize for bringing this tonight, but what has happened on Friday when they removed the ductwork, which is part of the project, what we thought was galvanized was actually a galvanized ductwork with something called PCD, which is plastic coated duct. that was around there, which helps protect from corrosion and whatnot. And there was our I don't know what we call them, our contractor, our process results, they did a magnet test before when we were writing up the scope of work, and it indicated that it was a galvanized piece of steel for the ductwork. Well, like I said, when they took it down on Friday, we realized it wasn't what we thought it was, and it was spec'd out in the scope of work to bring in galvanized ductwork, and then to be painted just with regular paint, not any special type of paint. And so we immediately asked for some alternates, for some better material that would be non-corrosive, such as aluminum or PCD coated ductwork. And the Boone and Dar responded very quickly. We contacted them again this morning and asked for these alternates so that we could come tonight to try to work with council and to work on this, because we are on a very strict timeline. We do want to reopen on September 28th. So they provided a couple of alternates. One is for aluminum, the aluminum duct, at a cost of $34,453.75. And then the PCD coated. And we've been in contact with Dale Neathammer, who is our the principal at Process Results, and he indicated that we should go for the aluminum, which would be a very good material that would be less or non-corrosive. We don't know exactly what type of credits we would be getting back for the materials that we have, the work, and so on and so forth. So they're trying to crunch numbers to figure that out, but there would be some type of credits coming back as well. But this is the worst case scenario. I don't know if maybe Todd wants to help explain.
Well, unless there are any immediate questions for Mr. Scruggs, I want Mr. Campbell to comment on this, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Ms. Scruggs alluded, we're waiting to hear on what the amount that the Applegate, they're the provider of the actual ductwork. They're a subcontractor to Boone and Dar, who's the general contractor on this project for the city. So we're waiting to see how much of a credit they would give us for the galvanized that we currently have. If you were to drive out to the rec center now, you'd see a bunch of galvanized, brand new galvanized ventilation piping out on the pool, the patio area for the storage area. So between that as well as the time credit for the time that they wouldn't receive for installing the current galvanized. And so we're waiting to see a credit that would be pushed back for the city, so obviously that would obviously reduce the overall amount that we would be responsible for.
What was the original budget for the galvanized?
Well, it's a good question. I had that same question. But per our RFP, they just submitted a lump sum. So they did not have a unit. It wasn't a detail. There was not a unit pricing in this particular contract. So we just have a lump sum. So we don't have, so the short answer is we don't have that specific number.
Mr. Rhodes?
Do we have some idea what the additional lifespan would be of either of these two options as opposed to galvanized steel?
I don't have that information.
But based on what was in there currently, it's the PCD, and that's lasted how long?
That was original ductwork, so
it's been 20 years.
Almost 25 years, 24 years.
But it couldn't be reused because it was deteriorated?
No, not deteriorated. They're reworking all of the ductwork. They removed it's a 16-inch piece of duct, and they're putting in, I'm going to guess 30-inch, a larger piece of duct.
Oh.
Additional questions? No? Okay. I'm sorry? No? Okay. So Carla, do you want to be kind of exact as to what your recommendation would be?
Well, my recommendation is to go with the aluminum duct. I don't want to do this project, put in the galvanized, and a few years down the road, or maybe 5 years down the road, we're having a lot of deterioration. Paint won't stick to that galvanized very easily, and we're going to have a lot of flaking and a lot of other maintenance issues. I think the aluminum is the way to go in order to avoid long-term issues.
And again, because it's a cost overrun, it would be absorbed by your fund balance.
Correct.
And I'm not speaking out of turn, and maybe Mr. Gearbaugh noticed this morning because he joined me for the audit review, the initial audit review from Plant Moran, that your fund balances exceeded expectations.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, we put the transfers in there for this type of repair. Unfortunately, now we've got to come up with more money for it. But, yeah, hopefully this will address those issues and not have to be a continued maintenance issue. So with the aluminum duct, they would still continue to paint it, so that would still hopefully just be a long-term.
But what I think, and I don't know for sure, I'm not an engineer, and I don't know a lot about this right now because I've just kind of been baptized into it. But the aluminum holds paint better than galvanized. I don't know for certain.
If it's prepped right, it shouldn't be an issue, but.
Yeah, and they have a subcontractor that is the painter.
Any other questions for Director Scruggs or for City Manager Campbell? Obviously, this is somewhat unorthodox, but the chair will entertain any motion that's properly worded that's offered from the floor. Again, because this was literally a 7:07, 7:08 addition to the agenda, we did not have time to prep a motion in advance.
I don't know, my only comment is we need to make a decision of some type, but I'm really uncomfortable voting on something when we don't know the benefit of it, nor do we know the credits that will come back to us. We don't have enough information to make a decision.
How problematic would it be if we waited a week?
It puts us behind more than a week.
Of reopening the pool?
Correct. Because it takes 5 to 7 days to fabricate. If we change what we're doing, they have to fabricate the duct. So right now, we would be pushing, if we do this and it's approved tonight, we'd be able to stay on that September 28th opening. That's what we would like to do. We have all of our swim lessons starting back up after the 1st of October. Water aerobic starts back, open swimming, whatnot. And the pool is a big part of our operation.
I don't mean to muddy the water, but I understand and I sympathize with the desire for a little bit more information. And I'm not suggesting this, I'm not suggesting what I'm about to articulate to be a sadist, but because I want to have a special meeting like I want a hole in my head. But, I mean, there is the possibility of calling a special meeting sometime this week if we were to get information, let's say in the next business day. What do we need, 18 hours notice?
Correct.
18 hours notice to call a meeting that may in theory take just a few minutes to approve this. I guess what I'm getting at, Director Scruggs, is I want to find a balance between those who want additional information, and I concede your point about moving expeditiously on this, because I've screened phone calls and had to deal with conversations with people who are upset about what they have to pay to be members, which is actually very competitive, of course, but the best amenity arguably is the pool. And to not have access to that is troublesome.
Right.
I'd be in favor of a special meeting. I'm not really excited about that either, but I understand we need to move forward, but I'm really uncomfortable.
Could you get it? I'm assuming you could get additional information the next business day, tomorrow?
Definitely. We'll do our best.
Okay, Mr. Gearbaugh, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's fine, because really I just want to understand what the incremental cost is with those credits and everything, but what else do we have in the contingency? Because I don't know how much of this is we've got to absorb. Looking at this, it says $35,000, but aren't some of these costs already in the budget besides the you know, like this painting and prepping, all this was gonna happen with the galvanized as it
Right.
already is,
So we
right?
would get a credit back, because that's already part of the project, to prep and paint that other stuff, so we would be getting a
Right, but
credit.
they haven't prepped any of the new galvanized
No.
stuff or anything, right?
No.
So I'm thinking some of these would be substitutions unless they're saying that it's more
Right.
expensive to do it, so. I mean, I'm comfortable if it was like $15,000, we could make a motion that it does not exceed $15,000, you could go ahead and do it, so that would be at least some kind of direction, but it's up to council how they want to handle it.
Okay, it sounds like Mr. Gearbuck could kind of go either way. Mr. Rhodes would be more amenable to a special meeting on this. Ms. Cybo Koenig?
I'm not in favor of special meetings in general, but I think that I could go with something that didn't exceed,
Okay,
like, to get her
okay.
on the road.
All right, so 2 for a not to exceed amount. Ms. Tahar?
Yeah, I would, theoretically, I would like to understand more about this, but in the interests of efficiency, I would go for a not to exceed scenario as well.
Okay. Mr. Roth?
I would go with the not to exceed. Who advised us to go with the galvanized?
It was written into the scope that was put together by Process Results. And that was based on what we thought our existing ductwork was.
Okay, just wondering if they're kind of at fault for our galvanized being there and what kind of credit we're going to get. You know, it's kind of been the history of the city. We've been getting kind of poor advice, poor things, and this is just another one to the list. And that starts with the many different factors that we're kind of abused by people that give us the wrong advice or the wrong product.
Well, I would say the only thing that, and maybe this would be my fault, is we probably should have written into the scope of work, or when we did our request, to have an alternate of aluminum, you know, like, just in case, and have that. And, you know, lesson learned, and I would never do that again.
Hopefully you'll be retired before we.
Yeah. Ms. Dillon, what's your preference?
I would prefer to have more information.
Okay. Well, so we're kind of split.
Special meeting, that's fine.
Special meeting is okay?
Because the issue is we don't have a clear understanding exactly. I would feel comfortable if I knew all these other costs were just going to be substitutions, but I don't trust that until we understand completely what was in the original contract.
Carla, do you think you can get the information that council desires within the next 2 days, and we have maybe start the ball or begin the process of calling a special meeting for Wednesday evening? That work for you?
That would work for me. I will get on the phone tonight with Boone and Dar and Process Results
you
and
2
tell them
days, I
that
guess.
we need to have this information right
Okay.
away.
Mr. Rhodes?
I'd like to request that we have a representative either from the general contractor or from Process Results, so that we have someone who's knowledgeable enough to answer questions. 'cause
On the technical
It's not
side.
really fair to expect Ms. Scruggs to know all those.
No,
things.
that's an excellent point. Let's work our way down the dais. Again, starting to my left. Ms. Cybo Koenig, would a 20, 30-minute meeting on Wednesday evening work for you?
That would be fine.
Do you have a time preference? I'd actually like to begin a little earlier than 7:30 if we could.
Yes, please, I would prefer
I
earlier.
would shoot for like a 6. I know Mr. Gearbaugh, you?
6 is fine.
6 is fine, okay, 6? Mr. Rhodes?
Yeah, earlier is fine, because I have environmental at 7:30.
Okay, I don't think it's gonna take more than half hour. Ms. Tahar, 6 on Wednesday?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, Mr. Roth?
Okay?
Okay, Ms. Dillon?
Yes, that's
Okay,
fine.
all right. So will you confirm that tomorrow, assuming that you think we're on a trajectory to get the information you need? That obviously gives you plenty of time to post the meeting, but maybe just something by the end of business tomorrow to council and department heads confirming that Wednesday is gonna work.
Perfect.
It's okay?
Yep.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, and, you know, hopefully we can get the matter resolved on Wednesday.
Right.
Okay, very good. If there's nothing further on that, we proceed to the discussion portion of our agenda, commission, committee, and task force reports from council members. Mr. Rhodes, please.
The Environmental Commission is co-sponsoring the County Cleanup Day which will be held this Saturday, September the 19th, from 9 in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it will be held at the DPW site. There is a requested donation of $10 per vehicle, and there are some potential additional charges depending on what people bring, but generally speaking, if you're a resident of Washtenaw County and you have materials, hazardous materials, metals, woods, whatever, you can, styrofoam also, you can bring it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. Any other commission, committee, or task force reports? Ms. Tahar.
Yes, thank you. I have two. First, the Saline Arts and Culture Committee had a special meeting on August 28th to work on our plan for the next year, goals and objectives. And that was a good and successful meeting. And the committee met in its regular meeting today, and the main focus was working on our assignment that we received from City Council in the strategic plan for the year in discussion of characteristics and possible locations for, that we would like to see that we think would be appropriate for an arts and cultural venue in the city, multi-purpose venue. So we will be continuing to work on that, and we'll see those results later.
Very good.
And then the second is the Oakwood Cemeteries Task Force met last Thursday, September 10th, reviewed proposed rules and regulations revisions, which we approved, which will be coming to council soon for review and approval. And there was also a proposal to add something to the city fee book related to the mausoleum that will also be coming to council soon.
Very good. Thank you for the update on that. I actually suspect some of those might be at our next meeting. Is that correct?
Try.
Good. Excellent. Any other commission, committee, or task force report? Mr. Gearbaugh, please.
The planning, of course, discussed the rezoning, but we also talked about that's coming up is the non-motorized path master plan. I believe our rec plan will be being discussed, so those will be two of the hot items that will be coming up fairly soon because it's time to do our review for those. So there will be, similar to like what we did with the approach for, I think uptown, and actually what we did with the charrettes or whatever when we were doing the input, we'll have the public gather so that they can put more input into it, and there'll be a couple meetings like that so that they'll have a similar type of plan and approach to doing the master plans. HDC met this last week. There wasn't anything really exciting. We approved a driveway on South Lewis Street, or South Ann Arbor Street, but we did have a concern with one of the homes recently that had work done on it, and there will be a follow-up report on that to us.
Tell me if I'm mistaken, because I had to leave the planning commission early, but the commission also approved a temporary sign for the new headquarters for Saline Area Social Services?
Correct, until they have whatever they decide to do with the permanent sign that's there at this time.
Very good. Any other commission, committee, or task force reports from council? Let's move on to reports or other announcements. Mr. Rhodes, I know you have one and something that you'd like to distribute.
Yeah, and actually, if you don't mind, and I'll try to be quick, I actually have three items that I would like to cover.
Please.
The first one is the Friends of Henny Field is currently accepting donations towards the campaign to raise $35,000, which will be matched. If we raise that amount, it will be matched by MEDC for a grand total of $70,000, and this would provide lighting and electrical outlets around the path which currently exists at Henny Field, around the perimeter of that area. This will allow us to have space for events which might go on into the evening and or for those where the vendors might need electricity. So you can go to the website Patronicity, patronicity.com/Henny Field, and make an online donation there if you wish, or you can make an offline donation, indicate the amount that you're going to donate, and write out a check and send it to me at 199 West Michigan Avenue, Saline. This is a short duration campaign. Funds need to be received or committed before October the 9th. If we don't raise $35,000, we don't get $35,000. So it's important. It's good for the community. It's something we ought to do. The other item that I have has to do with the Saline River Preserve on the Saline River, and I'm going to distribute some copies here that Clerk Royal graciously made for me this evening. Not looking for any action, this is just advance notice. The memorandum of understanding which is coming to you is in draft form, and so the final document, which may well come to council at some point for action, might be a bit different than that. But I would tell you that York Township has already signed their copy of that memo of understanding, and we anticipate that the city of Milan will sign theirs at their next city council meeting, and then we have ours, of course, and we have Saline Township, and we've gotten favorable verbal comments from Saline Township with respect to that. The idea is to put together a nonprofit organization to maintain the Saline River Preserve, which is the property previously known as the Berg property, and also to make the Saline River navigable from Curtis Park down to Milan, and then later on down to Monroe. The reason for the nonprofit organization is so that there's an organization that can apply for grants. And we would represent, that organization would represent 4 different municipalities, which would give us additional points on the application for grants. Anybody has any questions about that, you could just give me a call and we can chat about it.
And if I may, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, sir.
I actually have been in communication with Supervisor Stanowski from York Township, who I believe drafted the memo of understanding. Our legal counsel is looking at it now. If there are no objections from him and no serious objections from council, the goal is to have it on either our next meeting agenda or at our first meeting in October for discussion and perhaps approval.
Okay, great. The last item that I wanted to mention was earlier this evening, we passed a resolution designating October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Many of you know that my wife, Leslie Needhammer, has been diagnosed with breast cancer. And the memo, or the resolution, talks about monthly self-exams and mammograms, but it should also, I believe, mention ultrasounds. The mammogram, in my wife's case, did not show any cancer activity at all. She had an ultrasound, that showed it. They went back and did additional mammograms, even knowing that that was there, and they still could not detect it. So I would like to suggest that for women that are having mammograms, that they periodically request an ultrasound be made instead of or in addition to. It could save somebody's life. Thank you.
And we can, Mayor Pro Tem, we will make that addition to that resolution, because if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Royal, that usually comes up annually. Yes. We thank you for bringing that forward, and of course, you and your wife are in our thoughts and prayers. So thank you for those comments.
Thank you.
Are there additional reports or announcements? Ms. Tahar.
Yes, thank you. On August 27th, I attended a meeting of the Urban Core Working Group, which discussed, this is the Urban Core of Washtenaw County discussing transit issues. There are a number of interesting things from that meeting that I'll try to be brief about. This was the first time that Matt Carpenter, the new CEO of the AAATA, was present at a meeting. He made some comments, introduced himself. He made a good impression on me, at least. He seems very engaged and very knowledgeable already, even though he's only been on the job for a relatively short period of time. There was also, they gave us the fall rollout of new services, which went into effect that week. None of them reached Saline, but if you're interested, I brought the handouts if you'd like to see what improvements they've made already based on the new funding that they're getting through the millage that was approved. There was an update on the A-Ride service, which my fellow council members may recall was the service that we were discussing engaging more from AAATA to enhance our current People's Express service, but we had to hold off on that because they had some issues with their provider. They reported the new service provider seems to be going quite well. They'll be doing a formal review at the end of this year, so I expect that we will hear something from them next year about, come back to us about the possibility of looking at that service for us again. And finally, they are now beginning to work on planned service improvements to roll out in May of 2016. They're looking particularly at reorganizing service in Ypsi, that would be Ypsi City and Township, and also the west side of Ann Arbor. The public input process for this will start on September 18th and last to October 18th. So as far as I know, there's nothing out there yet for us to look at, but I'm planning to keep my eyes peeled for ways for us to provide input to that. And finally, I would say, just a hopeful note, in the new services that they rolled out this fall, there is a new Pittsfield Township route that's coming or is already in operation, I'm not sure now, that goes from the Walmart on Michigan Avenue in Pittsfield Township to the Meyer and Carpenter. So AAATA service is creeping ever closer to Saline, and I hope that trend continues. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Hart. Thank you for attending that. I was actually out of town on vacation in Gettysburg, and Mr. Hart graciously attended in my place and represented the city, and I'm sure did a fine job. Are there other reports or announcements? Mr. Gearbox.
Just real quick, because it will be in a couple weeks, I just want to announce harvest time at Rentschler Farm on October 4th. So encouraging everyone to come out and see we still have 2 pigs and some chickens, but there'll be pumpkin painting and some crafts and other things and a hayride. So we hope to have everybody come out and enjoy it.
Very good. Anything else, Mr. Hart?
Yes, well, so I would be remiss if we didn't also mention that Oktoberfest will be taking place downtown this month on the 25th and 26th, and Mr. Roth, I'm sure, will join me in encouraging everyone to attend the Saline Lindenberg Friendship Committee's bratwurst booth.
Excellent.
And if anyone wants to volunteer, please see me.
Well, I've got 3, and I'll try to be very brief. The first is, and you can review this, and I'll have Clerk Royal keep this on file, but we received a nice letter from Karen Ragland on behalf of Saline Summerfest 2015 for our continued support. I would, speaking of Lindenberg, I think we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that we had a nice group from our sister city here this past month. We had a wonderful reception for our guests here in council chambers, then had a progressive dinner later that evening. They did a number of fun activities in southeastern Michigan, excuse me. But I was privileged enough to go on a trip to the west side of the state, working our way up the west coast, starting at Saugatuck and ending in Traverse City and Charlevoix, that I suspect was well, I don't suspect, I know it was planned by Councilmember Roth, and of course he did a superb job. I think the Germans really enjoyed themselves. They had, we had a tremendous group of host families participate. And wouldn't you know, probably the best part of that trip up north was the first evening where they allowed me to tap a keg. And it was a nice traditional oak keg. And they gave me a beautiful suede apron, but of course the suede apron was more practical than symbolic. Because when you tap one of those kegs, it explodes. I think Linda's husband, Bruce, put some good pictures of that on Facebook. But I think our German guests had a wonderful time. They appreciated our hospitality. And I want to thank Linda and Jim and all the people on the Friendship Guild, our Twining Society, for organizing that. The other thing I need to acknowledge is I believe later this week on Wednesday, the County Board of Commissioners will consider triggering that same statute they triggered last year to generate funds for infrastructure repairs and road improvements. My goal was to have a resolution on the council's agenda for tonight, but I was just overwhelmed by a number of projects. But the one thing I would encourage you to do, if you have an opinion either in favor of that or against it, and please keep in mind that Saline derived, Ms. Bennett, you can refresh my memory, we derived over $200,000 when the county did that last year. Again, they're considering voting to do that again this Wednesday, so I'd encourage you to send an email or a letter if you have an opinion on the subject to the members of the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners. Are there any other reports or announcements? No, then we have two things left on the discussion portion of the agenda, and hopefully they'll be brief. The first is Streetlight Coalition update. Actually, I think Mr. Campbell is going to take the lead on this issue and the subsequent one. Or am I mistaken, Mr. Fordyce?
Yeah, while Mr. Fordyce is walking to the podium, you may recall council had expressed interest in joining this consortium a few months ago, as DTE referenced the wanting to increase their tariff for LED lighting, and after the fact of helping communities make that transition, and then all of a sudden now they're maybe wanting to change the rules, if you will. And so a number of communities have come together in this consortium, this coalition, to work towards not having those increased rates. So Mr. Fordyce and I attended kind of the kickoff meeting, and now he is our point person. So we thought it'd be good to just give council an update of kind of where things are at.
Mr. Fordyce, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. There have been 2 meetings of the general membership, and then there's also been formed an executive committee that meets more frequently. Generally, they deal with issues of budget and appointments, but they also are able to meet more quickly than the general membership if there's an issue within this review process that's going on. So the Streetlight Coalition has provided testimony to the Michigan Public Service Commission and filed briefs there. DTE has also submitted testimony and briefs, and those items are before an administrative law judge right now. The basic gist of the coalition's complaint is that the setting of rates to encourage changes to more efficient street lighting technologies should be developed in a collaborative process, and that the tariffs that DTE has recently proposed for LED lights are fundamentally flawed, in that the primary one being that they require you to make an upfront payment to convert a light to LED, and then they charge you a monthly fee after that. And part of the monthly fee calculation includes costs that are covered by that upfront payment. So they're kind of, at least in the math that they presented to the commission, that appears to be double dipping there. And then the coalition is also arguing that the costs that they are claiming for ongoing maintenance are unreasonably high and not backed up by actual experience in the field. And then their third point is that, and I think this one's a little bit weak myself, is that communities shouldn't be charged for upgrade fees to recover the initial cost of the LED luminaires. In the meetings that I've sat in, I haven't quite caught the logic on that one, but that's part of the filings. As far as the schedule going forward, the administrative law judge is expected to issue findings on October 8th, and those are then provided to the commission. And the commission is anticipated to make a ruling sometime in December. And they could either approve DD's proposed tariffs or make some other suggestion. And it's the feeling of the director of this coalition that the commission is the Public Service Commission will order DTE to participate in a collaborative process of determining how communities can effectively and efficiently convert their lighting systems.
Very good. Any questions for our DPW director? Okay. Appreciate the update. Last but certainly not least, Sauk Trail Business Park. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you have before you a memo from City Attorney's Office reference the properties in the Sauk Trail Business Park. You may recall those are being marketed for sale, and part of the conversation has been in the last year or better of the possibility of maybe rezoning those properties to more of a commercial type use as opposed to the industrial, manufacturing, high-tech type use. Having said that, so the other part of this, and the reason this is kind of driving this is that the city received a proposal to purchase a portion of Lot 20 that fronts on Michigan Ave there of the Sauk Trail Business Park for a learning-type daycare center. So this is kind of twofold in that, one, to see if this type of use could be permitted or not, and if that would have any impact, because currently the Sauk Trail Business Park is a state-certified park, which is essentially it's kind of it helps it's more of a incentive and for communities so they can work with MEDC and MEDA, Michigan Economic Development Corporation, and the Michigan Economic Development Association to help promote. They basically they have a website where the city has our certified business parks, and they're saying that, hey, this Saline is one of those parks, and it's a good place to develop, and kind of any extra that we can get, incentive that we can get to draw folks to come to a certified park versus a non-certified park. Having said that, so the question is, if the city were to allow a non-industrial type manufacturing use in this park, would it have a negative impact on the certification? As you can see, as long as it's not a retail type or residential, if it's a residential or retail type, then yes, we would most likely lose the certification perspective of it. But again, it's not a there's no financial penalty of that sort, and it actually is considered certified through 2000 or until 2018. So having said that, we also have in this park is the LDFA, Local Development Finance Authority, and that's where with tax increment financing similar to the TIFA, but this is for the industrial for the parks, and how that would have an impact. In order to receive the tax increment financing from a piece of property as it's improved, it would have to be for the manufacturing industrial type use. However, because it's currently, these three lots, none of them are on the tax rolls because they're owned by the city, so there wouldn't be a loss there, if you will, because if there were a non-industrial type use on there, those taxes would just go into the general fund as opposed to the increase going to the LDFA. So as you can also see in the memo from the city attorney, there is a method to for instance, if the council was interested in pursuing this type of use there, it would require, at minimum, it would require an amendment to the I-2 ordinance to allow essentially as a special land use, an amendment to the zoning ordinance. As you can see, it just kind of outlines the steps. An amendment to the zoning ordinance permitting daycare centers as a special use, and the Planning Commission's approval of a special use permit. Again, and of course, there would be recommendation to the City Council for that. And then expanding the list of industrial business services permitted by special use permit would not jeopardize the Sauk Trail as a certified business park. So a couple things. One, to potentially discuss whether or not council would like to expand the special land uses under this that would be non-industrial, non-manufacturing, and then if so, would you be interested in this particular use on that property as a learning daycare center? So that's kind of where we're at.
Let me start this off, because I have actually made this comment to our city manager, and I believe to some of my council colleagues. I think Ms. Tahar and I have had a brief conversation on this topic some time back, but I actually think it would be more beneficial to look at this issue in a broader context. I believe Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, Councilwoman Tahar, and Councilmember Roth will recall that when we went to the Suburban Summit event hosted by MML at Westland City Hall, there was a breakout session about what some communities in southeastern Michigan in particular have done relating to zoning in former industrial parks. This is also an issue I've discussed with legal counsel and also with the chair of our Code and Ordinance Review Task Force. And I actually think because we have an organization set up to review, vet, and research these types of things, that might be the appropriate place for this issue to start. I'd also note that the firm of Dickinson Wright has worked, does work, and has worked in communities that have done all sorts of unique, creative, and flexible things with zoning. So I think this is an important issue, something that we need to consider and think about, but I think it should be done in a broader context, and again, my opinion is that it start at the Code and Ordinance Review Task Force.
I would concur with that approach.
Okay, let's just work our way right down the dais. Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at what we do in our industrial parks, I was looking at more of a bigger project. This seems to be kind of piecemealing and cutting up a major lot that we would actually lose out on it. I'm not saying that we don't have other lots and maybe some of our other industrial parks or even lots within the city, but at this point, I think having the ordinance task force do it would be fine.
Okay, Ms. Seibel Koenig?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, Ms. Tahar?
Yes, and would it also be useful to have the planning commission looking at this?
Well, if you recall, I don't have a problem also sending it to the Planning Commission. Of course, there's the link between the Planning Commission and the Code and Ordinance Review Task Force. That was one of that was the impetus for why Bill Beardsley is on that group. But I have no issue with also making sure this is added as a discussion item at an upcoming Planning Commission meeting.
Right,
There's
yeah,
also the
just for the sake of the input and the perspective from the point of view of people who deal with planning all the time in the city.
Mr. Gearbaugh makes a good point. If you're going to send it to planning, then I think there's value in sending it to the economic development boards as well for comment. Okay, which of course they don't meet until they meet again in November. Right. Yeah. Okay. So you got a little bit of a wait. Mr. Roth?
I'm in favor to pursue it.
Okay. Ms. Dillon? Yes, also. Okay. Think you have consensus on that?
Yes, sir. So I will, I'll contact the folks that have proposed this and say that this is actually going on a different track to review. So, I mean, they may or may not, I don't know what their timing is or that type of thing, but this is going in a different direction at this point to see what it is that would be compatible there.
Correct. And the other thing is, in speaking to Chairman Little, it sounds like if this issue is reviewed and vetted, there's also, he thought, one outstanding issue that the Code and Ordinance Review Task Force needs to take a look at. Again, that was his understanding. And once that issue is dealt with and this one is investigated and discussed, then it's my understanding as well as his that may wrap up, I mean, that may conclude the group's work. So.
Very good.
Okay. Excellent. Is there anything else to be brought up as a discussion item this evening? No, we covered a lot of ground tonight, folks. Thank you for your input. We come to the second public comment period. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments on anything at all?
Hi, I'm Heidi McClelland, and I live on Henry Street, and I just wanted to say as a city resident that I appreciate your support for the Chad Tuff run, and thank you to Councilmember Rhodes and Mayor Morrell for helping support that. I think it is a big community event, and while the city can't financially support it, I think it's a good thing for our community, and even in the press and stuff, I know that it's been on the news that it's been held in Saline, and so even if it's Pittsfield Township, technically, it's still our community and our people. So just wanted to thank you for your support on that.
Very good. Thank you for those comments, Heidi. We appreciate you being here this evening. Any other public comments? No, then I would note that the clerk's office will be sending out a confirmation, but please plan on a work meeting to discuss the ventilation project at the Recreation Center for this Wednesday, September 16th at 6 p.m. here in council chambers. That'll be followed by our next regular meeting, which is a week from today. Regular meeting beginning at 7:30, a brief meeting to discuss the 2015 Celtic Festival at 7. Then our 2 meetings in October on the 5th and the 19th. We have a work meeting at 6 PM on the 5th to discuss the Michigan Avenue makeover, a work meeting on the 19th to discuss it's our annual community event review, and of course, our regular meeting will begin at 7:30. If there is nothing further to be brought before City Council this evening, we can dispense with excusing absences because there are none this evening. So the chair would seek a motion to adjourn at 10:10 PM.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Gearba. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. This meeting is adjourned.
I would assume we're going to get some publication out.